So, kind of along with those lines, when you hear a gobbler way off in big country, so let's say maybe you just get up to the top of a ridge, a good listening spot where you can hear a lot of different directions. How do you decide whether to chase after that bird or maybe just keep covering ground looking for a more workable one? How does terrain and accessibility to the bird fall into play? Obviously, you also mentioned that birds are willing to travel and will travel pretty significant distances to come to where you're at. At what point do those decisions get made based on where the bird is or where you are or where you think he'll come or where you can get to?
Right. So for me personally, it might be different than certain other people maybe, and I'll try to mix that up a little bit. I would say for the average hunter, if I was giving advice for somebody going out, and once again, I'm going to tailor it to our area because
Hmm.
everybody back there already knows their own areas. And I'll tell folks, get out there in the morning, obviously, get on a good ridge, certain height up, and listen, and then, start talking like you're in a tree talk, classic stuff, whatever you're using. Just do a little bit of light answering, see who's hammering in your direction. And it's usually pretty obvious. Our birds, like most turkeys, will turn on the limb and they'll answer you pretty hard if they're intent on coming, if they're workable. If they're just gobbling, but not really gobbling at you, then you probably have a bird that's got his own hens with him. And you're going to have to get closer, usually within 70 yards or so, before you're going to have a chance of pulling that bird. And if you don't have any birds that are pretty much hammering straight at you, then it's a good time to bust a move and get in there tight while you can. Because off the roost out here, it's very, very workable. You just have to be the first bird on the ground
Hmm.
and then do a really hardcore gathering up, yelping, demand they come. And usually you'll pull that younger Tom right off the limb and he'll come in when it's barely light enough, strutting all blue in the face. So, that is one way of doing it. Otherwise, if someone isn't hammering at you, a lot of the birds are going to come down and they're typically going to go silent. And those who understand that just get in the general area of where you heard them last because they're not going to
Hmm.
be that far from it. Sit down and make some really light calls now and then until you strike one back up. Or eventually, somewhere around 9 or 10 o'clock, typically in the earlier season, that bird will start answering again on his own, coming back to where he heard you. I mean, these are all classic moves that aren't
Hmm.
unknown to most people. But that's pretty much what I try to tell folks that are just getting out there is get out, listen, do some calls, get your yelping down. Cutting is not critical out here. We're not working Easterns. I
Hmm.
know cutting's a big thing back east, and it's a well-established fact. And I'll have a lot of guys come out here and they are just ripping into the cuts. Don't need to do that.
Hmm.
It's a bit of advice there. And it's just not necessary with our birds. Myself personally, when I'm going out, just because I've had enough time out here, I'm usually trying to isolate a bird and maybe hunt a specific voice. Typically, if I have the time, or if the season isn't beating me down with helping other folks a lot, and to the point where I just want to fill a tag, which is
Hmm.
not unusual either. But if I have the time and I can really relax and enjoy myself, I'll go to those areas where most people probably aren't going to walk to. I may do a 10-mile hike in,
Hmm.
literally, and then start my hunt out there. But I might be walking at 3 o'clock in the morning so that I can get out there and still hear a voice. And like I said, those bigger voices, they stand out. And I know that it's not going to be an easy hunt. It never
Hmm.
is. It turns into almost like hunting in Eastern. Like, you're going to get out there, you're going to get as close as you dare and not get seen. Pretty much going to have to let him come down, do his thing, maybe answer him a tiny bit. Don't do too much calling too hard at all. Then he'll typically go silent and he's going to go around and go to all the girls that he knows where they're nesting.
Hmm.
And he'll do that real quietly. But then, usually around 11 o'clock, he'll announce himself again. And typically by then, most people are out of the woods.
Hmm.
Either they've given up and gone off to breakfast, or there's just nobody that deep in the first place anyway.